Milo, is that you?
There, I think I got it. Bruce, are you on mute?
Oh, sorry. Hello, Lionel. I was just having a nap in the corner there.
Yeah. How did you?
I put a new cushion on the milk crate. It's very comfy, and I just kind of get in there and then nod off now and then.
We should like they do with those 20-foot containers. We should, out of milk crates, we should build you a giant lounge chair.
Funny story that when I was at university, there was one of the university dorms was next to the McDonald's near campus. And at that time, the McDonald's was not smart enough to contain its milk crates. And so there was a lot of milk crate furniture over in the student dorms. And one guy had his desk there, then surrounded by milk crates and some 2x4s, and had his bed over his desk on a milk crate structure. So it was, and there were some couches in there. So it was all very, very entertaining. Yeah. And then they stopped and figured out they were losing too many milk crates and started locking them up.
Yeah, back then they must have lost milk crates by the thousands.
Oh, I know.
Like, I don't know what it was like. I don't know what it was like in the United States of America, but in Canada, that's how we all had milk crates. So it was like you had a hockey stick, gloves, skates, and milk crates.
Yeah, that was it.
Speaking of milk crates.
Yes. Sorry. we drifted off topic somehow. Strange how that's never happened before.
Yeah, it's never happens. I have no way to segue in this other than, speaking of milk crates, we're going to talk to, hey, crate sounds like great. And
there you go.
And what's the greatest ever online model railroad magazine?
The Great Model Railroad Hobbyist.
Exactly. And that's who we're going to...
Edited by the great Joe Fugate.
Exactly.
Great Fugate. So we're getting all sorts of rhyming going here.
Yeah. We're poets and don't know it.
Yes.
Right now, George Taylor, who's delivering FedEx packages, is slamming his head into the wheel going, come on, get on with it. Get on with it.
Yeah, if he hasn't already gone into a ditch.
Yeah. Or if he's got one of those vans with the sliding doors, he's probably thrown himself out of it while it was still moving.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, George. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk...
George, wherever you are, take a picture.
Yeah, exactly. George, right now, George Taylor, wherever you are, FedEx driver in Eastern Ontario, take a picture right now. And while he's at it, little Mike, you take a picture right now too. Little Mike Wachowski, take a picture at the same time. I really think we should make little Mike a super fan, but here's what I've come up with. I can't decide, so I'm going to filibuster and keep the number 31 spot open until I can't filibuster any longer.
I see.
What do you think about that?
Well, the Eddie Cheever number is an important number.
There you go, Eddie Cheever, Boston Bruins.
Was Eddie Cheever 31? Yeah, it was 31, wasn't it? Or was he 30?
I don't know. Maybe you should work the Google on the internet machine.
I'm thinking of that.
Well, I guess that's all the time we have for tonight.
Tune in next time when
Joe Fugate of Model Railroad Hobbyist is here because every year Joe tells us about the state of the hobby. We already talked to Otto Vondrak about that because he's the newest editor in the Model Railroad Journalistic Wars. But Joe Fugate talks to us every single year for the last 23 years. So he's here again.
Hi there, guys.
Hi,
greetings.
Joe. Yes. Hello.
So has it been 23 years?
Seems like it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Seems like it's been 23 years, so we'll go with that. So, Joe, you've been sick.
Yes. It wasn't fun. It started with a sinus infection, turned into ear infection. Then on top of that, I visited my saintly 91-year-old mom, and she had bronchitis, and she gave it to me on top of everything else. So I finally got better after weeks and weeks of antibiotics, and I'm back in the land of the living, as they say now.
So here's a question for you. I know you don't have a gigantic staff, but you have an efficient staff. How much, like, is the magazine, like, is the magazine, like, just barely ahead? Like, if you took a week off or 2 weeks off, would the whole thing come to a grinding halt?
Yes, unfortunately, I'm integral to a lot of the processes at MRH Media. So, but fortunately, in this case, we have a assistant editor in training, as I call him. He's currently called our editor at large. It's Eric Hansman, and so I prevailed upon Eric to put in some extra hours, and he basically saved my rear this time. So
Eric Hansman of Design Build Op fame? That guy?
could be, yes, probably is him. Yeah,
He lives in Nashville?
yes, that's him.
And I believe he's close personal friends with Garth Brooks.
That could be.
We've had Eric on several times talking about the RPM meets.
Yes, Eric is very passionate about that, and yeah, he's a great modeler. So that's he's one of the group, and really likes what the RPM guys are doing.
Yeah, well, that's another whole subject. So, can I ask, how long has Eric come on board, and how did that come about? And tell me as much as you feel comfortable, and then tell me some more.
Okay. Well, we used to have Don Hanley was assistant editor, and then Don, he's also self-employed and working part-time with Model Railroad Hobbyist as an assistant editor, and they have like a cleaning business and a catering business or something. Anyway, they were expanding their business and needed more. Need to put in more hours. So he said, as much as I hate to say this, I think I'd probably better focus on my business, and I need to resign. So he resigned, and we went for about a year and a half or so with just me at the helm. But I said, we really need to try to find somebody to replace Don. So I posted a call for people to throw their hat in the ring, and one of the people that did was Eric. And so I talked to Eric and had a great conversation with him, and he sounded like a really good candidate to me. And so at the time I said, I need to look at some other candidates, and I need to kind of look at how MRH is doing to make sure that we could bring you on board. And so it'll probably be a while. So it was probably about 6 months. And then I got back to Eric, and I said, okay, Eric, I think we're in good shape. Here's the situation. Here's what I'd like to offer you. Are you interested still? And he said, oh, yeah, very much so. So I think he was brought on board about, I think it was probably the spring of, let me think, this is 2019. It was probably the summer of 2017 when we brought him on board. So,
okay.
And he's just working very part-time right now, but the plan is to, we've also been training him, and so he's learning more and more about how to produce the magazine and how to help edit the content and everything. So eventually, what we'll probably do is he'll become editor of Model Railroad Hobbyist, and I will move over to becoming the executive producer, basically the head cheese of Trainmasters and Trainmasters TV. And Barry's actually phasing out at this point.
Barry Silverthorne.
Yes, Barry Silverthorne. Yes.
Okay. And I think Eric's going to be a great addition. He'll be great. Eric is a top shelf guy. I got nothing but positives to say about Eric. Not that my recommendation means anything or whatever, but I mean, Eric is a good guy, solid individual. I bet you're pretty happy with him.
I am. He seems to have really great hobby sense. That's really important. And he understands a lot of different scales and all different aspects of the hobby. And that's really important for an editor of a general model railroading magazine, of course. And so,
Yeah, from his number of blogs he has, though, he certainly has a lot of knowledge on all sorts of different subjects, which is got to be a plus.
Yes, he does, definitely. And so I think that's going to be a great thing that's coming, and so that's what we're working toward.
That'd be cool. And what is so what is hobby sense? What is that? You said he has a lot of hobby sense, or he has great hobby sense. What is that exactly?
Well, by that I mean he understands modelers and understands how scale model railroaders think. There's a certain mindset that you can tell when a particular article or a particular layout, as soon as you walk in the door, you can tell that the person understands the intricacies of the hobby. They understand the core aspects of what really resonates with a lot of modelers. And Eric's that way. He understands the passion for the hobby and understands the scale model railroading hobby really, really well.
It'd be almost, I think, what Frank Ellison used to call the fitness of things.
Yes.
The fitness of things, like us, Bruce, fit guys.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example too. You can get really, especially if you think of an RPM guy, you can get really passionate about counting rivets and how get really anal on hyper detail and all of that sort of thing. And that's fine if that's something that really floats your boat. But I think it's really helpful if you can also keep your feet on the ground a bit and understand that there are practical limits to things. It's a little bit like remember Alan McClellan and his good enough philosophy.
Yeah.
And for example, one of the big dirty little secrets of the hobby is that most model railroads are not 100% scenic.
Right.
There's a lot of plywood Pacific on a lot of railroads. If you walk into a room and you see a layout that's 100% finished, it's almost a sensory shock, right? Because there's no bare benchwork anywhere. That everything's detailed and nice scenery. Everything's nicely weathered. No matter where you look, that just it kind of shocks the senses a bit. Most railroads aren't like that. Model railroads aren't like that. So there's a practical side to the hobby, or sort of a reality side to the hobby. And Eric gets that. An example is he did we have a piece in our Running Extra ad-free paid magazine that's called Aha Moment. And the idea is some little knowledge tidbit that's like, I never thought of that. That's a good idea. Or wow, where'd you get that idea? Kind of stuff.
Right.
It's kind of in that category. Well, what Eric did, he did a aha moment piece on how he wanted to have operations, but he didn't have enough time to prepare for the operating sessions to get all the equipment, totally gorgeous, fully weathered, fully detailed. So he took stuff out of the box in some cases, put the trucks on it, put the couplers on it, and it could even be a kit, and it was just a shell. And it often wasn't, it was like a resin kit, for example. So there was no paint. It wasn't painted, wasn't lettered, no details applied at all. Yet he pressed it into service.
Right.
And so he put labels on them with, car IDs so that he could actually do the op session and say, take this particular car, and you knew which car he was talking about because you could read the label on the side of the car, even though there was no decals on it, right? So that's just a real practical example of one of the things you can do is that's very valuable is shake down the railroad. Let's find the bugs. Let's find the glitches. And the way you do that is you run trains, right? You do op sessions. And so even if the stuff isn't completely ready, let's be realistic here. Let's be practical. And so, Eric understands the practical reality side of the hobby as well as the rivet counter ultra detail side of the hobby. And he gets both and he appreciates both. So to me, that's a good hobby sense.
Yeah, I like that. That makes sense. So I have a question for you. Bruce, see if you can help me with this one, buddy.
I shall attempt.
All right. So when we talked to Otto Vondrak, the newest editor at RMC, he's very excited about that. I think he'll do a great job. That's a print magazine, if you didn't know, Joe.
Yeah. Yes, I know.
Okay.
They do have a digital edition, though. I just bought a digital copy, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, he talked about, he made a lot of sense about being the editor of a magazine is kind of like being a gatekeeper. How he spoke about, you can't just print anything.
Yes.
And sometimes you have to turn people away and say, if you work on this or you improve this or something like that. And so I thought that was a really neat way he described, because, before the advent of the internet and online, as you worked, Joe, you worked with Model Railroad, like the only place you could get any recognition or be able to show off your stuff was in these print magazines, and you had to be a certain level to get in. So he spoke about how he was, how being an editor is kind of like being a gatekeeper. Does that make sense to you?
It does. It does. It's a little bit like what, someone like a librarian, right? Certain, you sort of are a caretaker of the books that are in the library. And you also have control over what books you have on the shelves versus what books you decide to not put on the shelves. So the same way with being an editor, you decide what content that you're going to go ahead and publish, and you decide what content you're not going to do. And we don't reject a lot of content, but we do have at times people. Well, the other thing is I won't take just anything. If people submit something to me, there is a process I go through where I say, okay, this sounds like a good idea. Here's what I'd like you to do. They send me something. I say, okay, this is good. This isn't. You need to make these changes. And often we hear from them and they make the changes. Sometimes that's the last I hear from them.
Right.
And then there are times when they submit what amounts to the final piece. And generally, once we've worked through it, they've done what I've asked and I will accept it. But sometimes I won't. Occasionally I get pieces that just don't fit our content style at all. For example, Model Railroad Hobbyist is more of a how-to scale model railroading magazine than it is a magazine about collecting model trains, or even a what I would call a news and human interest magazine.
Right.
So, we'll sometimes get a story from somebody that says, hey, here's this really cool thing that's going on with this this guy, and he's doing these model exhibits, and they're at this fairgrounds situation, and it really plays really good to the public, and blah blah blah. And I generally go, well, that's nice, but we're not a news magazine. We are a how-to magazine. And if I filled our pages with stories like that, I don't think we would lose our readership, basically, because our readership expects most of what we do is help me do the hobby well, and that's our focus.
Okay, so would you say? I think I know the answer because I do get the your magazine. I would say you cater more to the intermediate to advanced model roader rather than the beginner. Is that a fair assessment?
That's true. That's because Model Railroader particularly does really well catering to the beginners, and I consider the audience of Model Railroader are the people who are graduating from the carpet to the first train layout. And they cover that really well. And so why should I try to be an also-ran? Why should our magazine try to be an also-ran? So yes, we focus more on taking those people that have been introduced by Model Railroader to getting the track up off the carpet and onto that first layout. But we'll take you further then. We will take you, to the next step, all the way to becoming a real expert and a much more advanced modeler in the hobby. So we'll spend a lot of time covering more advanced techniques and lesser known ideas on how to do various things in the hobby.
Okay, so I think that's perfectly then where your TOMA approach fits in. It's giving that guy a next step to proceed along to building a larger layout than, say, a 4x8 or small project layout type thing.
Yes, it is, because the 4x8 is certainly a popular way to start, but there are certain things about a 4x8 that's not ideal. And also, once you get the 4x8 built, then what? If you want to do something bigger, do you just take the 4x8 and haul it to the dump? What do you do? So the idea, as you're aware with TOMA, the one module approach, TOMA, the idea there is let's go ahead and learn the hobby and do all of the hobby skills, but let's do it in a way that we can keep the scope small and very achievable and get something that we can run trains on in short order, weeks or months instead of years. And once we get that one built, then we want more railroad. Hey, build another one. And also, with our much more mobile society now, if you relocate, you don't just rip everything out and haul it to the dump. You can actually take it apart and take it with you.
Yeah. So when did the light bulb come on above your head and say, aha, this is the aha moment and TOMA's the way I should start getting the word out?
Well, it sort of evolved. I think it was May of 2015. I did an editorial, and it was I called it the one module approach. And the idea was, in talking with a lot of people, I'm aware that one of the hobby's secrets is there's a lot of armchair guys. They frequent forums, they read magazines, but they don't, they may even have a nice collection of unbuilt kits and locomotives in boxes on the shelf and so on. But they aren't really doing the hobby. So the idea was, let's get you doing the hobby, and let's don't decide we're going to do a decade-long project of fill the basement with railroad. That's just too much, and that's one of the fears of the armchair guys. Some of them is that it's, quote, paralysis by analysis, right? I'm afraid I'll make a mistake, so I'll just keep gathering information and considering options, and perpetually they're just always in analysis mode. And so it's like, how do we get out of that mode, and let's actually experience the hobby, and let's, because the best way to really learn is to hands-on, and dare I say it, make mistakes. So if you build something that's like 2 feet by 6 feet, and let's experience the entire hobby. So we're going to build the whole thing all the way from design to track work to scenery to actually running trains on this thing. We get this 2x6 thing built and wired and everything, and let's hang a little bit of staging off of each end. And you can just use, I call it flat top staging. You just get yourself a 1x6 and put 3 staging tracks on it and some turnouts, and now you've got 8 feet of staging track on one end and do another one on the other end, and you can run trains back and forth through your module. And although you can't obviously run a lot of through trains on that, there's a lot of fun to be had by just learning to put decoders, DCC decoders in your locos, make it a sound decoder, so now you can enjoy sound. Let's put some momentum in there, and modern sound decoders have braking. So let's learn how to do braking so that we don't run off the end of the module, right?
Get one of those proto throttles and use it.
You get a proto throttle and use it. You can have a blast on 2x6 on a 2x6 module with some staging on each end. Or there's nothing that says that you can't build a 2x6 module and then run a temporary loop around to the other end. And so now you got continuous running. There's nothing that says you can't do that. And, if you want, build 2x6 modules back to back and then put a little loop on each end. And now you've got, like a 2 foot on one end. So that's adds 2 feet to the 6 feet, and 2 feet on the other end. So now you got a 4x10. And it's got continuous running, but it's now 2 modules. So when you're done with that and you're looking around in your basement or your attic or your spare room, and you go, I built those 2. That was really fun. It'd be cool to have some more layout. So let's build another module. And now you start to arrange things along the walls in the room. See? So you just have a lot of flexibility that way.
How often have you had somebody send in an article where it's kind of like you go, well, okay, then this is fine. And you barely have to do anything. And you're kind of like, well, how cool is this? The guy just sends in an article, somebody you probably haven't never heard of, or you may have heard of in passing, and all of a sudden an article just shows up that's pretty much ready to go. How often does that happen?
Not very often. It does happen, but it's kind of rare. Most people are okay when it comes to writing, and most people are, quote, okay when it comes to taking photos. But they're not great writers and they're not great photographers. Once in a while, and this is rare, probably has happened a dozen times in the whole life of MRH Media. So, let me think here, we're coming up on 12 years. So in 12 years of time, maybe a dozen articles. So that's about roughly 1 a year.
Yeah.
I'll get that's like flawless. But we have certain standards, for instance, that for maintaining consistency. So, for example, is it boxcar, BOX space CAR, or is it BOX CAR, no space? Is it dull coat, DULL space COAT, or is it dull coat, DULLCOTE?
Right.
And we have pages and pages of consistency standards. And so one of the things that I will tell, if somebody submits something, I'll look it over. And if they're using a lot of those different terms, I will send the article back to them, and I'll send them a reference to our, what we call our style guide, and ask them to go through and make the piece consistent. And the thing I tell them is, if you'll do that instead of make us do that, then I'll pay you more for the article.
Oh, okay. All right. So instead of them getting like $1,000 a page, they get like 1,500.
Right. Not quite that high. Yeah, it varies depending upon. We price our pages based on how much visual content you've provided.
Okay.
So if you want the value of a page to go up, give us more photos or diagrams.
And how are photos now? Do you take any photos that are just on phones? Is that acceptable these days, or?
Yeah, most phones and mobile devices in general will do a really good job with photos. But like any photo, make sure it's in focus. Make sure it's well lit. The thing that I notice, and I even make this mistake when sometimes I'll use my phone for photos that I put in the magazine too. The thing that's really easy to do with phone is that you can actually be moving the phone and the picture's actually blurred. But when you look at that little thumbnail after you've taken the picture, it looks fine.
Right.
So what I recommend to people, it's especially true if you're doing a how-to article where you're taking pictures of the steps. And what you don't want to have happen is you get the model 3/4 of the way done, and then you go back and look at the like the third step that you did and look at the photo full size and realize the sucker's blurred.
Yeah.
Well, now you can't go back. You know, you've finished the model. You can't go back and take the picture again. So I urge people, you know, if you're going to use a mobile device, especially for photos, make sure the photos are not blurry. And to do that, you're going to have to take that thumbnail and you're going to have to blow it up. You're going to have to look at it full screen so that you can tell that it's not blurred.
Yeah.
We can fix a lot of things. Well, the thing I tell people is we have editors. One of our copy editors used to work for the Oregonian newspaper. So we have editors who can make you sound like $1 million in your text.
Right.
But if you send us a blurry photo, I'm sorry, we cannot make a blurry photo not blurry.
Yeah, that's like what I've learned with podcasting. It's like the one thing I cannot fix very well is over modulation. Oh, too much volume. I can bring volume up, but bringing volume down, and you know, when it's over modulated, it's impossible. You can make it bearable, but that's about it.
Right.
Like a bad photo, you can squint at it, but it's just not the same thing.
Right. And what I tell people too is photos make or break our articles. It's funny because I'll get someone who will contact me and they'll say, "Hey, I got this great idea for an article," and then they'll write, you know, half a dozen paragraphs and say, "What do you think?" And my response is, pictures make or break our article. Your text is not nearly as important to me as the photos. So send me some sample photos and then I'll tell you what I think.
Yeah. Yeah, like the old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words.
That's right. And so yeah, if you've got, and there's a truth in video that seems counterintuitive, but it's really true. And you know, you can have mediocre picture video quality, but if the audio quality totally sucks, you can have like the best looking video ever, just crystal clear, sharp video. But if the audio sucks, people will think the video sucks.
Yeah.
So back to the article thing, it's like pictures and text. The pictures can be awesome, the text can suck, and people will still think the article is awesome. But if the text is awesome and the pictures suck, people will say this article sucks.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I have Bruce here, because if you don't have a really good host, then you need a good backup.
Which I still haven't figured out why I'm here. So. Oh, wait a minute.
So I see you went to Andrew Keeney. Okay, the other question I was going to ask is, so how much, I remember when I was at Model Railroad, sometimes they used to have 2 and 3 years worth of stuff in the can that they could put in the magazine when they were, you know, doing an issue in a certain direction. Like, do you have tons of stuff in reserve, or?
Well, we used to. I would say we used to have 2 to 3 years worth of stuff in our backlog, and I think we've talked about this in prior years, but basically our page count in the free ad-supported magazine peaked in 2016, and there's lots of reasons for that. A lot of it has to do with Google, Facebook, and YouTube capturing the ad market for anybody who goes on the internet, and they've even taken advertising away from the likes of MSNBC and CNN and Fox.
Really?
Yeah, so we're not alone in having the ad-supported side of the business shrinking. So we've been shrinking on the ad-supported side since 2016, and you know, the basic idea is more ads, more pages. Fewer ads, we can't do as many free pages. So the magazine had been shrinking since 2016, and then by 2018, I came out and said, you know, we've like shrunk 35% since our peak in 2016, and it's getting harder and harder. You know, if you send an article into us, it's getting harder and harder to get in the magazine because we're not putting as many articles in the magazine now because the page count is down. So then I launched Running Extra, which is our ad-free extra articles magazine. So basically, running extras 7 to 8 more articles, and MRH typically has 3 feature articles in it now. And so between MRH also has a couple of columns in it. But between MRH and running extra, you're getting like 10, 11 articles a month now. So we're burning through articles a lot faster now.
Okay.
And the end result is I think we're under a year of backlog now.
All right. So that's something you need to be concerned about, I guess.
Yes and no. I mean, the good news is now if you submit an article to us, it's going to get published probably within a few months. In the past, it could have been you submit an article to us and 2 years will go by and you still wouldn't get published yet.
Yeah. And people are always excited to see their stuff being published.
Right. And it also means that I now deliberately beat the bushes more to commission articles. I'll go talk, if somebody makes a really good thread on the MRH forum and they've got some awesome modeling, then I'll contact them and I'll say, hey, that was a really good photo you just posted with that grade crossing, and it looks so real and blah blah blah. Could you write us an article about how you did that? Or if you're doing another scene on your layout where you're doing that, could you write it up for us? That kind of thing. I'm actually going out and commissioning articles from people to make sure we've got something in our backlog. And then the other thing is I'm now also going on the road more, doing layout tours. And that's also coupled with the phasing in of my trainmaster's responsibilities. Because I'm going on the road at least twice a year now.
Right.
And I'll go to a location and spend 5 days at that location. And each day I'm doing a different layout. So, in a matter of a couple trips, I will get 10 layouts lined up. And then we don't always do layouts, stories as cover stories in the magazine. And we also have some other people that are submitting content to Trainmasters TV. Luke Talon did a video for us, and Mike Confalone does some really nice stuff for us as well. So between Luke and Mike and me being on the road for layout tours, then there's at least one act every month on Trainmasters TV that I'm doing. Or
Okay.
I'm making sure it gets done by virtue of working with Mike Confalone or Luke Talon to get a segment in one of the 4 weeks. And then many of those become cover stories in Model Railroad Hobbyist too.
Yeah, and that's kind of so. All right, so this is a great question, Bruce. Let me know if this is a good question or not, would you?
I shall do my best.
All right, Mark, use the same scoring sheet you used in that show we did about 2 years ago.
Oh, okay, that one.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
All right, thanks. So, all right, so
you might want me to not use that one.
Yeah, all right. Well, all right. You know what? Make up your own score then.
Okay.
So I see this month is Andrew Keeney's layout is featured on the cover of MRH.
Right.
The Nashville, which is in Lansing, Michigan, I believe.
Yes, it is.
And one of our regular listeners, Jeff Brigham, operates on there. Hi, Jeff. How you doing? So when you go out, when you go out to these locations, as you say, and you're going to do Andrew Keeney's layout, is it hard to find other layouts to do when you go out on the road? Like it sounds like you're doing a bunch of layouts in an area.
Yes, that's what I do. I go to a location and then I line up some layouts. Usually the problem is there's more layouts than I can fit in 5 days. And so really I expect I will eventually make the same trip again.
Really?
Yes. It depends on how big the place is. Like this next May, I'm planning to go to Austin, Texas. And, you start looking at who's in Austin. You got David Barrow, Tommy Holt, and then, on and on. When I started asking for who is in the Austin area that I could visit, I ended up with like 20 or 25 layouts.
Wow.
Well, I can't do all of those layouts. Now, they're not all going to be, you know,
The quality that you need for the magazine.
right. They're not going to be all, you know, A plus type layouts. But the other thing I am a firm believer in is not everything needs to be A plus either, because once in a while you need to cover something to remind us all that mere mortals can do this hobby too.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. Absolutely. Which is what this podcast is about.
And in fact, you know, you mentioned Andy Keeney's layout. Andy doesn't have a lot of scenery yet. He's got a triple deck layout without much scenery. And so the article in Model Railroad Hobbyist actually kind of broke some rules this time, because I think there's 107 photos
Yeah.
in that layout article, and probably 90 of those photos show areas without finished scenery and with some bare bench work.
Yeah, you look like a drunken sailor. You were taking so many pictures.
And so, you know, I firmly believe that the publishers have kind of done the hobby a disservice by insisting that only pretty eye candy is what people get to see. If you go, it's funny, if you go back to the 50s and 60s, there were plenty of bare bench work or mixed, you know, under construction scene photos in Model Railroader, for example, in that time period. But somehow things changed. And so I said, I'm not going to do that with this article. I'm going to show some bare bench work right along with everything else, because I actually did a little sidebar, and I said, this is, you know, let's have a reality attack here. This is the way most layouts look. I've seen hundreds of layouts, you know, in the last 15 years that I've been really active in the publishing side of the hobby. And most layouts are not finished. And so let's break that myth right now. And I said, the other thing is, if you get to see sort of what it looks like under the hood on these layouts, you might actually learn a thing or two as far as how these things go together. So let's break out of that straitjacket. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to cover this layout, and I'm going to not be a bit ashamed to be showing you unfinished stuff.
You got to be pretty happy with the way it turned out, because I'm looking at it right now, and I mean, I haven't seen a photo that I was unhappy to see. And I mean, I think what people need to realize, I mean, we'll get into the whole, you know, advertising versus pages thing, because I didn't fully understand that, but that doesn't. But I mean, I've been looking at this article while you've been talking. Not that you're not an interesting guy, don't get me wrong. But I mean, each picture is well worth viewing, and I love the fact when you're on this on the magazine, you go to the top, you hit full screen. I mean, I have I have my laptop, I have my MacBook Pro, but then beside it I have like a 19-inch or 22-inch screen or something like that. And
Right.
so I'm looking at it now, and I mean, then the pages come up, like I'm looking at picture 92 through 107. And I mean, they're all worth seeing. And then you just click on the page becomes bigger. And then you can slide a little thing across and look at the picture. And I mean, this is great stuff. Like, people should be flocking to your magazine.
Well, I appreciate that. I certainly think so. And I actually set up all those. What I decided to do was, I'm going to, this is a huge layout. It's a triple deck layout, and it's like 1,600 square foot basement room. So, that's equivalent, if you flatten the sucker out into one level, that's like a 4,800 square foot room.
Yeah.
That layout would be in. So this is huge. There's a lot of layout here. And so I said, I'm going to start at one end, because the way he explained it to me, he said, although it looks bewildering when you first walk in the room and see all these decks and go, oh my gosh. He said, actually, it starts here and it just goes around the room, climbing. He said, there's no reverse loops, no turnbacks. So it's basically 3 times around the room, staging to staging.
Wow.
And so I said, okay, I'm going to just get the camera out and I'm going to walk around the room. I'm going to start at staging on one end, and where I'm going to take a picture. I'm going to overlap the photos. so you know where you were from photo to photo. Now I'm going to take a photo of every single square inch of this layout, and I'm going to publish this. And so now, you know, how many layout stories have you seen every square inch of the layout?
Yeah. I, I really like it. I really like how you can zoom in and look at all. I think this is a great idea. I don't see because you're already at, as Eric said, or as you said, you had a hobby sensibility, so you're already at a decent layout. So if you like the scenic parts, there's no reason why you're not going to like looking at the rest of it.
Well, it's a fascinating layout, and it would be, I think it would be just a hoot to operate there. There's just, you know, so many possibilities of what you can see, and so many towns and different industry possibilities and so on. It's just you know, I'm amazed at someone who's been, you know, if you think about the sheer scope of what he's trying to do, he's done an amazing job to get it even this far. So yeah, rather than berate it because not every scene is finished, I want to celebrate all of the work that he's done and to appreciate all of it. So that's why I wanted to do that layout that way. And like I said, I think you can learn things by studying those photos too.
So when you did this layout, Anders in Lansing, where was your home base for that area?
I actually stayed in Grand Rapids because one of the things I wanted to do while I was there is finally really cover Bruce Chubb's Sunset Valley properly.
Yeah.
And Bruce has a museum project that he's doing as well.
Really?
Yes, he's they're going to actually build a model railroading museum in Grand Rapids.
Holy mackerel.
And it's going to be like this T-shaped building. And so in each of the three wings, there's going to be a layout. And so the focus, the largest room will be like 7,000 square feet, and it'll be his Sunset Valley, which is another triple decker. His Sunset Valley, but it'll be all on one level.
Okay.
And nice 8-foot aisles so that the public can come in and see it. But it'll be an operating layout. You know, he has, you know, Bruce, if you know about his background in the hobby, he's really big into electronics and signaling.
Yeah.
And he's got 2 different CTC machines on this massive layout. And so one is made by, you know, the company that does Southern Pacific, the olive green CTC machines. Another one, it's escaping me now the name of the vendor, but General Switch and Signal maybe. Anyway, their machines are all custom made and they're all black, totally black machines. So he's got one of each. And so imagine just the sheer museum value of having an operating train layout that has that, you know, basically 50s style CTC operation going on.
Yeah. Oh, I got some more questions about that, but before we get to that, Bruce.
Yes.
I think we should just touch when Joe said about back in the 50s and 60s, it was not unusual to see layouts that weren't finished. I know you're a great historian and a great follower of things from the 50s, 60s, 70s. So you must remember that because you know all those magazines. You're a great fan of Frank Ellison and John Armstrong.
There was a lot of layouts, like I would say, probably 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the layouts you would see not fully scenic. Things like the Delta lines, you see those articles, but he had some scenery everywhere, and then some of the bigger ones. And then there were articles where guys were showing you how they're building their layout over a number of series. But he's right; you saw a lot more of under construction photos back then than you do now.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, why not go that direction?
Oh, and one of the things I know when I've gone on layout tours before and operating sessions, I'm often sticking my head under the benchwork to see how they built the benchwork or how they got things wired up underneath and stuff like that, because you can learn just as much about a layout looking at the underside where all the operating guts and stuff are, as opposed to the top side where the trains and things are.
It's interesting you do that. I do that too. I like to stick my head under the layout.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think I don't see how that can't be a good idea. Now I know we talked last year, but that was last year, and that we've had a lot of podcasts since then. Now I know Jeff Brigham commits them all to memory, and I know Rod Deary's trying to listen to them all, and we got a bunch of guys out there that are, and Mike, little Mike Wachowski, I think he's on his 4th time through listening to the podcast. But like, I know, explain to me again about the advertising, what's happening with that, and try to explain it to me in layman's terms, because I'm not the brightest bulb in the room.
Okay, well, what's happening is the old style advertising model is that you put ads in a magazine, for instance, and people look at the magazine, and if they see something they're interested in, then they might, follow up on what the ad is promoting. And of course, we took it one step further where you could click on the ad and bam, you're on the guy's website. So that's great. But what has happened is Google, Facebook, and YouTube have taken over the ad market from anybody who is in the online internet space trying to do ad supported. Okay.
Right.
And the reason why that is because Google, Facebook, and YouTube can keep track of your interests. So for instance, on Google, if you're doing searching on particular topics, they can kind of keep track of that. And if you're on Facebook and you visit certain Facebook pages a lot, then, for instance, if you're always visiting the Model Railroader Facebook page and, the RPM, one of the RPM groups Facebook page, and, the transition era modeling Facebook page, and, all the different pages that are out there, Facebook can get a pretty good idea of what you're interested in. And then also YouTube, what videos do you watch? And so all those 3 sites have an ability to know what your interests are, so they can target the ads. Ads that are in a magazine are not targeted. So, we can have, some N-scale guy can be reading our magazine, and 60-some% of the hobby population is HO. So we get a lot of HO stuff, and we also get a lot of advertisers that will appeal to HO modelers. So the N-scale guy is going, not interested, not interested, not interested, not interested a lot in the ads in our magazine. So they're not targeted. That's what I call blast advertising. And so the end result is, meanwhile, you got an N-scale guy, and he's goes out and he's searching for something, microtrains. And bam, microtrains goes straight to their site, because he, it's funny because basically what Google does, for instance, is they'll look at what you're searching for and they'll give you ads that match your search topic. And I even had a discussion about that on the Model Railroad Hobbyist site. People were guys going, I'm getting ads on Google when I search for something. I said, you betcha. And so I did a search, and then I put the search results page up, and I pointed arrows at all the ads. And the guy goes, I didn't know those were ads. Well, of course you don't, because you're searching for that. See? So that's the difference. Facebook, YouTube, and Google can target the ads based on your interests. And so all of a sudden, whereas we consider an ad that gets, say, a 1% click-through rate to being a successful ad campaign, if you're searching for the topic and you get the ad because you're searching for it, or because you get the ad because you've shown you have an interest in that, you're much more likely to click on that. And you don't even consider it an ad. It's like, have you also seen, that sort of thing. You don't consider it intrusive because it's something you're interested in. And the end result is, a really good Google ad campaign will get like 7, 8, 9, 10% click-throughs instead of 1%. And so an example is one of our advertisers said, I could pay you guys $500 a month, and, I might sell a couple $1,000s worth of stuff from your ad.
Right.
But I can go and I can spend $70 on Google and I will sell $3,000 worth of stuff. So you tell me where I should be advertising. And, I can't argue with that. It makes sense. So there are good reasons to advertise still in Model Railroad Hobbyists. For one thing, if nobody knows who you are, Model Railroad Hobbyist is a good place to get your name known if you're not known.
Right.
The other thing is there's always value in reminding people that you're there or to announce something fascinating that's new. So even if you're an Athern or a Bachman or a Walthers, there's value in being in our magazine because you can remind people that you're there and you can also announce new stuff. And if you happen to hit a nerve in a good way, you happen to hit a nerve in a good way with an ad, like Walthers did an ad recently. They hit a nerve with something that people were really wanting, and they got 7% click-throughs in our magazine.
Wow.
So, there's still value there. So, but the thing is, we now have to share with the likes of Google and YouTube and Facebook in terms of people wanting to place ads. And a common trajectory for a vendor is they're a new guy. They come, they advertise in our magazine for a couple years, get really well known, and then they go to YouTube and start putting YouTube videos out there that are ads. And they decide that those YouTube videos are generating so much sales for them that they really don't need to be advertising with us anymore. So they'll leave. So, when I look at the 2016 peak and I look at where we are now in almost 2020, so that 4-year period, and I look at who left, what I find is they're now advertising on Google, YouTube, and Facebook. And so that's what they've done. And you can Google this trend, and you can find that from the big guys all the way down, I mentioned CNN and MSNBC and Fox and all those guys, from the big guys on down, there's this lamenting that Google, Facebook, and YouTube have captured the online advertising market, and anybody who is dependent on being ad supported only, the conclusion is you better be looking for other ways to generate revenue because ad supported by itself is no longer enough. So that's what we did. That's why we started the ad-free edition called Running Extra.
And how's that going?
That's going really well. It's interesting. I don't know if you want to get into comparing the paper magazines to us, but
absolutely. I got a question for you.
Okay.
Before you go ahead. I think this is another good question. Bruce, have you got your pencil?
I'm keeping score.
Attaboy. So this would not the paid magazine be a better reference point for you to see how, in fact, your business of producing an online magazine is going, because you can see it growing because people are actually paying for your product? Does that make sense?
Yes, there's a dirty little secret quote that I heard through the grapevine that the paper paid magazines say about us. They say, used to say about us. They can't say it so much now, but they used to say, yeah, MRH has a good circulation, but what would their circulation be if people had to pay for it?
Right.
A little hint. Maybe it's not that great of a magazine, and the only way they can distributed is they have to make it free,
Sure.
But then,
so how's it going?
Well, first of all, I will say that the paid circulation, I can't give numbers, but the paid circulation of Running Extra is larger than the paid circulation of the digital edition of Model Railroader and the digital edition of RMC put together.
Wow.
So Running Extra is the leader in the paid digital magazine market space.
So about 200,000 paid circulation.
Yeah, not quite that good, but
it must be pretty exciting though, eh? It sounds like it was a worthwhile way to go, and it must be kind of cool to to work on that end of it. Like I really like with the podcast, because I mean, let's not kid ourselves. This is a loosey-goosey podcast. It's, one guy, with a lot of helpers as far as on-air personalities. And I have, the Tuesday show is, you got to pay for it. And it's fun to see that it slowly, steadily climbs because people want it. And it's very rewarding to know that people want it. So it must be kind of the same feeling for you.
Yes. Well, definitely. The other thing that's interesting is the paper magazine circulation continues to erode. Even now, it continues to erode somewhere between 4 and 7% a year.
Right.
The other thing is and this is surprising in one sense, but not surprising in another. But the other thing is that the circulation of the digital editions of the paper magazines has plummeted. And there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, if you just look at digital in general, in other words, ebooks and, e-whatever, different things are available, the glitter has worn off. The bright shiny object syndrome
Right. Yeah.
has worn off, and they're not really growing like they used to, and in fact in some cases they're shrinking. And in the case of the digital editions of Model Railroader and RMC, they're shrinking a lot. And the reason why I think that is because those paper magazines have not made the mental shift to digital. They're still paper, and they think that the digital thing is just a electronic version of their paper thing. That's
a question I want to ask you. Obviously, and I was thinking exactly what you said. The digital editions are basically a digital edition of their paper edition, but there must be, you found out that there's a different mindset to a digital magazine versus a digital version of a paper magazine.
Right, there is, and we price Running Extra deliberately extremely competitively. It's priced, you're looking at a 100-page magazine, 100-plus page magazine, and it's $2.99. Now, it's only digital. You can't get it in paper. But if I was to print that magazine, the other thing with Running Extras, what we do is we actually tack on Model Railroad Hobbyist on the back. Okay. And the idea there is that people, if they sign up for Running Extra, rather than have to force them to have to do 2 different downloads and keep track of 2 different magazines and the hassle of all of that, we'll just throw Model Railroad Hobbyist on the back. And so you got one thing that you can download. You get everything that we've produced that month. And so the end result is a copy of Running Extra will actually be somewhere 300 pages plus once you put it all together. Okay.
Which is pretty good value for $3.
Yeah. And the other thing that's ironic is we do on-demand printing of paperback books as well. And so I thought, I'm going to take this magazine that's a 300-page magazine, and I'm going to price it out. Most of the on-demand paperbacks that we do are 100 pages. Okay. And so, we can produce that and sell it for $20, and we can make money doing that. And an on-demand is they'll make one copy and ship it to you. Okay. That's actually a feasible business model now. Well, a 300-page magazine, 300-page magazine, if I do that on demand and throw in the shipping costs to ship it to you, we're talking the States now. We're not talking send it to South Africa. Okay. It's going to cost right around $20 cost to produce an on-demand magazine. And it will be almost an inch thick of 80-pound paper. So that's every single month you're getting that for $2.99. And then look at the current paper magazines. They're struggling to do 80 pages a month. And they're also using really thin paper because they want to keep shipping costs down, right? So
Wow.
So that's the difference, see? And the other thing that the magazine publishers are doing is they're charging the same price for the digital edition that they do for the paper edition. And I know why they do, but it's wrong-headed, okay? The reason why they do is because the accountants are in charge, and the accountants are saying, it costs us the same amount of editorial cost to produce a paper edition as it does, or a digital edition as it does a paper edition. So why should we give away our editorial effort in the digital edition and charge less for it than we do on the paper one? The mindset is, both of those publishers, I think, outsource their publishing. So in other words, to them, the part they pay for is their editorial part, and they never see the publishing part or the shipping part because they outsource all that. So that's like out of sight, out of mind. So they're just looking at the editorial costs, and they're saying it's the same amount of editorial effort to produce one versus the other, which is largely true. So they say we're going to charge the same price, but that's wrong-headed, because that's not how digital media is priced. You give people a pricing break on digital media, because you're not paying for paper, you're not paying for ink, you're not paying for packaging, you're not paying for shipping and handling.
And then that's where a lot of the I can think off the top of my head, things like the LD SIG, the OP SIG, none of those ones. You can buy a print subscription or an electronic subscription, and they give you a break on electronic subscription because it's less for them to produce it to you. So when you start throwing in mailing costs out of the U.S., that becomes a significant amount. So for $10 a year versus $30 a year, something like that, it makes it worthwhile to go the electronic only, and then you still have the advantage. You can, you have it there. You can print off parts you want. You can go through and pick the best out of. I've done this for a number of them with the 7mm narrow gauge. They've run a series of articles in their digital version, same as their print version, and I've gone through and extracted those pages and curated them into one complete set of articles on that topic. So now I have my custom magazine, as it were.
Right. Yeah. So while the paper magazines are shrinking, the circulation is going down, the page count's going down, and the cost of paper and ink and shipping is going up. So you're paying more and you're getting less. What's wrong with this picture? And so the advantage we have by staying away from paper, at least on the magazine side, we'll make you a paperback and ship it to you. We'll make you a DVD and ship it to you. But we're using state-of-the-art methods to do that. So we use on demand, and we can price things affordably and still make money doing that. So that's working for us. And the end result is, last year to this year, we have more subscribers than we did, the year before. So we're growing while the paper magazines are shrinking. So you figure it out.
Yeah, and I guess that's one thing maybe a lot of your readers don't realize, is they go to your website. There's the store section in there that there's lots of neat things you have to offer besides the magazine.
Right, and of course Trainmasters TV, which if you want your sort of weekly fix of train stuff made for model railroaders by model railroaders, then you can do Trainmasters TV too. And the other thing with Trainmasters, just recently we moved to a new website, and we've just released. We're now a channel that's available on Roku. Trainmasters. You just search for Trainmasters. We're on Roku. We're on Apple TV. Also, soon we will be releasing an Apple iOS app for Trainmasters, and an Android app for Trainmasters. So you'll be able to watch us on your mobile device. You can watch us on your big screen TV with Roku or Apple TV. I talked to, for instance, Model Railroader this last summer, and I said, "Are you guys, they knew who I was and everything, but I said, why aren't you guys looking at getting on Roku or Apple TV?" And he just flat out said, it costs too much. And it's true. It's not cheap to do, but we went ahead and did it anyway.
How does it cost too much? Like they charge you to put it on there?
Well, you have to go out and hire programmers to build it. Okay.
Oh, to build the app or build the
Right. To build each app. And, then you can't just build it and forget about it. You need to basically contract with those programmers to have support too.
Right.
And then also, if you do sell something, for instance, like if we sell a membership on Apple or Android, they take 30% right off the top.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And we get 70%.
Okay. So that's, but that's cost of doing business.
But there's 16 million people that watch Roku.
Yeah. Exactly.
So you just do the math. So
who even get 1% of that? It's a fair whack.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry, but just explain to me real quick, in 30 seconds or less. What do you have to do to be on Roku? You have to build an app, or you have to what to do to get on there?
You have to hire some programmers to build an app for you. Yes.
So everybody on Roku has their own app, kind of thing.
Yes, they've hired somebody to build some programmers to build an app for them.
Okay.
And then you can't just like hire the programmers, build the app. Okay, thank you very much. You actually have to have some hosting set up and links to that hosting, and then you have to maintain that app. So because you'll release the app, and then Apple will send you an email that says, "Hey, by the way, that we just noticed that you're using this particular set of routines out of the library that we've provided that's on our iOS stuff. Well, we're upgrading the OS, and we're changing how those work. So you need to change how your app's going to work, or your app's going to become obsolete."
Wow.
And so, and that happens every few months kind of thing. As well as you'll get somebody that will say, "Hey, every time I try to put in my credit card in your app, it tells me my credit card's not valid. What's going on?" And so then you need the programmers to look into it to figure out what's going on. And then they'll go, "Oh, we forgot to do X, Y, and Z." And so, 90% of the credit cards will work fine, but this guy's credit card has that one anomaly that we didn't account for, so you got that kind of stuff happening all the time. So you have to keep paying the programmers to keep working on the app too. So you're not done when it's,
So rather than a guy maintaining the printing press, they're maintaining the app.
Right. So the combination of how much the big gouge that Apple and Google Play takes out of your revenue is one thing, and then you're constantly paying programmers. Well, it's a big cost to pay programmers, and then second is to then pay the maintenance, keep the programmers around to keep working on stuff when things break. So there's that. And we got an advantage because the company that we went to host our Train Masters TV video on the web, it turns out they're a company that started out working with corporations hosting corporate videos on the web. And so they build up quite an infrastructure around the globe for streaming videos. And so I managed to find them and get in contact with them. And as part of the price of hosting, they will build apps for you. And so we got a, quote, really sweet deal. We got like a huge discount on what it would cost if I went out to try to find, developers for this stuff in the open market. So we got a really sweet deal. So I said, let's go ahead and do this. So there we are. So we are now, not only is our Running Extra magazine the largest digital edition that you pay for, hear that, paper magazines, that you pay for, do we have the largest circulation of any of the paid digital editions now? But we are the only Model Railroad specific streaming video provider that you can get on Roku, Apple TV, and as apps, soon to be apps on your mobile devices. The only one.
Wow. Well done.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of how far we've come. We're making some good inroads. And then, as if that's not enough, then we were contacted by a company called 24 Trains, who's a European company, who wants to create sort of an all things trains sort of hub website. And they wanted to know if we would be interested in participating and getting basically all of our MRH stuff out there, including Trainmaster stuff. And we said, yeah, sure, we'll talk to you about that. So basically our stuff's going to be available. They're starting out in Europe, but eventually they hope to push into North America too. But yeah, so all of our stuff will be available there too.
So, hey, Bruce, I was trying to make comments. I was making a lot of interesting comments.
Yeah.
But I was on mute.
Oh, well, you're not on mute now.
No, not now. So that's but I was going to say, you're always been really interested in this stuff, which helps too. I mean, that's how you got started. I always like to tell the story. 100 years ago when I went back to Model Railroad and said, hey, I'll do my column on the internet for free for 6 months, and they were like, they didn't think the internet was going to last. And you went to them. The way I always tell the story is you'd climb to the top of the mountain and you'd seen the future, and it was digital and it was the internet. So you've always been interested in this stuff, which helps you. Like I'm sure it's kind of like a hobby for you, investigating Roku and investigating all this stuff. It kind of makes sense to you.
Yes, it does. Yeah. Well, my background's in internet, right? Or computers.
Yeah.
Computers. But when the internet came in the 90s, I was all over that like white on rice. So,
yeah.
I managed web developers in my day job, so yeah, it's always been something that's an area that's fascinated me. So.
All right. So now we're going to get down to the $1 million question. Yeah. First off, I'm going to have to chastise you because I was only going to talk to you for 40 minutes or 45 minutes and then get Tony Cook on here from editor of Model Railroad News, and I was going to have the trifecta. I was going to have the editor of RMC, the editor of Model Railroad Hobbyist, or the Running Extra, and Tony Cook. But you've been once again, you've been so interesting. You've turned yourself into a single segment.
Well, I guess that's both good and bad, huh?
It's good. It's only good.
It's only good.
It's only good.
Yes.
So let's get to the $1 million question again, as we do every year. So your Running Extra is going good. Is that what it's called? I'm looking at it right now, but
yes. Running Extra.
Yeah, okay.
It's a play on words, right? The railroad concept, right? Running Extra, but it's also great because it's extra pages that you don't get. See?
It's really well done, though. I'm looking at it now. And
it is. It's an amazing publication.
Yeah, you're doing a hell of a job. So okay. So you go. So two things. A couple of things you said tonight. When you go out first off, too, you got to get me back on Trainmasters. I'm telling you, you give me 5 minutes in front of the camera, and I'll at least entertain people for 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, let me mention something to you. Okay.
All right.
As part of taking over this from Barry, I'm going to be standing up a temporary studio that we use twice a year in Kansas City. So if we can get you down to Kansas City when we're shooting segments, then we can get your smiling face in front of the camera now and then.
I'm there.
Okay.
I'm there. I'd love to do it. I liked doing it before, so it was fun to do. And I've had, and the other thing, let me go around the show with a camera and bug people. People love that crap.
Yeah.
So anyways, where was I? Oh yeah, you go into these towns and you're telling me there's a lot more layouts than you thought there would be. And then also Running Extra is doing, I would say by the sounds of it, it's doing at least as well as you were hoping and maybe better.
Yes.
So the $1,000 question, $1 million question, $100,000. We've reduced it just for today. The $1 million question is, how's the hobby doing?
I think the hobby's got a lot of potential with the next generation. And for instance, we're going to be running an article in Model Railroad Hobbyist in the January issue, where the La Mesa Club is now hosting youth operating sessions.
Wow.
And they're extremely popular. There's each time they host a session, more are coming than came to the last one. And on top of that, what really impressed me is they've got 3 guys that sort of are the mentors to the kids. And you look at these guys' faces, and they look like they're all under 40 to me.
I'm sure they are.
And so it's like, this is awesome. One of the guys looks like he's probably still in his 20s. And they're mentoring these youngsters, teenagers mostly, that are coming to do these op sessions. So what better way to get the hobby in the blood of the young guys than to have some other young guys who are sort of showing them the way and having these great op sessions?
You sound enthusiastic. Let me be enthusiastic for a minute and tell me if I'm way off base. Tell me if I'm completely nuts, and if you do, I'll accept it. But recently, and since I started doing this podcast, it seems like more and more people I talk to, like I interviewed a guy, Matt Martin. He was 27 at the time. He's a train master for the BNSF in Alliance, Nebraska. We have Adam Pinellas, who's in his mid-30s. We have so many people in their mid-30s, 20s, and early 40s. Dave Abeleys, who's 42, he's got a beautiful layout. There's a layout you got to get in your magazine.
Yeah.
There are so many people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s that I don't think anybody realizes that this hobby is going to explode, because I think what's happening, I truly believe that what's happening with social media is that the kids that before couldn't find anybody to share their love of trains with just go on the internet, Google in trains or train clubs or whatever, and all of a sudden they connect with all kinds of people in their age group around the country, and it's completely different from anything we've ever experienced in the hobby before.
Right. Well, in a lot of ways, the hobby hasn't changed a bit in the terms of the younger generation. For instance, are you aware that the La Mesa Club was started by a bunch of teenagers who couldn't get any air bandwidth from the local clubs?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It was a bunch of teenagers who started that organization. And look at where it is now, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and one of the reasons why I think the paper magazines are struggling is because a young guy in the hobby does not go down to the newsstand looking for information on model trains. What he does is he goes on the internet, like you say. He Googles, he goes to YouTube looking for YouTube videos. That's why, for instance, Ken Patterson's weekly video podcast that he's doing, people are coming out of the woodwork, and they're all young guys. The other thing is, if you go on YouTube, I did this one, just spent a day, and I went on YouTube, and I started searching for model train videos where people were talking about their coolest model train, whatever purchase that they just got. And I found hundreds and hundreds of videos by young guys. A lot of them sounded like teenagers, and you got, some teenagers saying, look at this car. It's a such and such type covered hopper, and it's got KD couplers, and it's got etched roof walks, and this is an awesome car, a teenager. So, the kid's clearly talking about the hobby stuff like he understands what's in the hobby. He's not just some train set that he got, at a flea market or something. And it's all over the internet. You go start looking for how-to videos on doing the hobby, and at least half of them are by guys that still have hair on their head that's not gray.
Oh, for sure. A friend of mine, Ron Marsh, he literally started his YouTube channel looking for people to connect with, and he does how-to videos, And I mean, he's got well over 20,000 subscribers. He's got like 22,000 subscribers now, and they're just, now he's very good in front of the camera and everything, but he's just started his YouTube channel as a way to connect with people. And the next thing you know, like he's on Model Railroad Academy and all these things, and he's got all kinds of people, looking at his channel, he never before in the history of the hobby would have he had that opportunity. And now go ahead.
One of the criticisms I hear leveled is that kids aren't interested in trains today because they don't see trains, like we used to see trains. Well, let me debunk that right away. Go to a military modelers convention, meet, whatever, and look at all the kids that are buying World War II stuff and walking out of the show, grinning from ear to ear with a bag full of World War II military modeling stuff. Now, when was the last time those kids saw a World War II tank roll down their street?
Yeah.
And that kind of ties into what, when we talked to Otto Vondrak, he went out on a visit to a junction somewhere on Long Island, and there was a bunch of teenagers there, all kind of met through the internet. They were up to date and enjoyed taking the pictures of the trains and videos, and they knew everything about it. And that's the way they're going. So, yeah, the younger generation is there. We're just not looking at them a lot of times.
Right. And the other thing I've done is I've been taking an informal poll. Every time I go to a train show, I go walk around, look at the layouts, and look at the age of the faces that are behind the modular layout that's set up. In other words, they're the guys that brought the layout. They're the guys that are there to run the trains. They're part of the group. And the faces are getting younger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I personally think so. Okay, the answer is to the question: is the hobby growing or shrinking or dying, or what's it doing?
I think it's slowly getting bigger.
Yeah,
but it's slow.
Yeah, it's slow.
And the main reason for that is that it's a lot because the core of the hobby, in terms of the manufacturers and the publishers, a lot of the core of the hobby hasn't figured out where the modelers went yet. And so what's happened is the growth right now is largely grassroots because it's the young guys all connecting with each other on YouTube and Facebook. And, they're finding each other and they're doing the hobby, and they're not getting very much help from the mainstream publishers. Now we're trying to do more than just about anybody, I think. And it's having a difference. For example, Ken recently did a video podcast, and I asked him to talk about Model Railroad Hobbyist more than just a mention. So he spent about half the podcast talking about MRH and, Train Masters and our store and running extra and all of that stuff. And the end result was he got a bazillion comments from people in the comment section of that YouTube episode saying, wow, I never realized. Look at all the cool stuff that Model Railroad Hobbyist has. So see, it's a matter of getting the word out.
Sure.
But, those are all mostly a bunch of young guys that are becoming aware that we are out there and that we exist. And so that's what you have to do. You have to go where the modelers went. And they're not hanging around newsstands. And sad to say, they're not hanging around hobby shops that still exist, brick and mortar shops anymore either.
No, I think good brick and mortar shops will survive because I think those guys will eventually find them, because it's always fun to go to a good hobby shop if you're in the hobby. I mean,
it is.
Like a friend of mine, Stephen Atwell, him and his dad just started, recently opened a brick and mortar store, Midwest Model Railroader, which is going really good. And then my buddy Chris Brimley out there in Provo, Utah, with exactly, Train Line, and they opened a brick and mortar store, and they're doing well. So brick and mortar, I think, will always do. Good ones will survive, no problem.
What they need to do, and I know what Chris Brimley's doing, his group's doing, for example, too, is they do a lot of hands-on stuff. And, it's more than just, hey, come in the store, buy some stuff. Hi, how you doing? Tell us what's going on, a little chit chat, that sort of thing. You need to actually be a social center for the hobby and for learning about the hobby. And the hobby shops that, and as well as have a good internet presence, which Train Life clearly gets that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exact Rail, they clearly understand that part. But, have a good internet presence, but then also your brick and mortar needs to give people a reason to meet there other than just buying products. Be a hotbed of learning about the hobby too, and that's that side of it. And you will do well if you do that.
I think what's going to happen is that in I don't know 10, 20 years, right now there's this gathering of young people. They're finding each other on the internet, and they're going to swell forward over the next 10 to 20 years. And at that point, the hobby's just going to kind of be like a chia pet where you just added water to it. And all these young guys that have been devoted to the hobby for 10 and 15 and 20 years are just going to make it explode. Like, I don't see anything other than this hobby's going to continue to grow and expand. I'm convinced that Al Gore invented the internet strictly for model railroading.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And the thing is that once those young guys that are getting into the hobby now, once they, get to the point where the career's well established, the kids have left home, all of that sort of stuff, now they've got lots of time and resources. And, they're going to go like mad then with the hobby. So yes, as you get older, the hobby tends to be something that's even more interesting, and you have more resources to do the hobby in the large too. So
yeah, so I mean, it's just going to be awesome, don't you think, Bruce?
Oh, absolutely. Exactly.
I did some plotting of the different generations. The veterans generation, I guess, and then the baby boomers and Generation X and the millennials, and now they're talking about Gen Z, which is the generation after the millennials, and looked at the sizes of the generations and just did numbers based on sizes. Okay.
Yeah.
With the idea that Gen X is a much smaller generation than the baby boomers, so if the head count's less, the interest in the hobby is going to be less. And then also applied the known demographic, which is people get interested in the hobby when they're young, but then as kicking your life off, your career, college, military, all of that takes place, you tend to not do the hobby as much. But then as the 40s, 50s, even 60s start to approach, kids are gone, career's well in hand, you're making more money than you ever did before, kind of stuff, and you're looking for something to do, and you go, oh, model railroading, that was really fun. And so you get back into it. So there's usually this big upswing later in life.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Anyway, I plotted that all out in terms of the size of generations and plotted that against the calendar. And remember, I'm just taking the total heads.
Right.
And assuming, not a huge, massive interest in any one generation. Okay. Well, what it shows is there would be a big surge in the hobby interest in the 50s and 60s, start to wane in the 70s, 80s, 90s, actually start to pick up again in the 2000s, and you're going to hit a new golden age higher than ever by the time we get to about 2030.
Yeah, I can believe that.
So we're actually on the upswing.
So,
right
so Bruce, we'll just be hitting our stride by then.
That's it.
We're going to be.
We might be using walkers when we hit our stride.
Hey, speak for yourself. And we'll be like going, Joe, it's been like 102 years we've been doing this.
Yes.
It keeps getting bigger, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, you know what? You're going to have to. Go ahead, Bruce.
No, okay. Finish up, and then I want to come up with a question.
All right. I was just going to say Joey has to apologize to Jason Clockey, but go ahead, because we're going to have to push Jason back now.
Yes.
Because Joe has created an episode that we will air on the first Monday in January, which will be January the
6th,
5th.
Yes.
5th, 6th. All right, cool. All right, go ahead, Bruce, and then
Uh,
we're signing off.
We're signing off. This you may or may not want to cut this out. I'll leave it to you.
No, I
I'll
won't.
give you a gap.
No.
A year ago, Joe, you shared some very exciting news with us about finding some extended family, and just wondering, you were quite excited to go meet them, and just wondering how things have gone now that you found these other people in your lives.
Well, on my mom's side, it's great. My dad's side still been fascinating, but my mom's in the best health, and my dad has a combination of Alzheimer's and leukemia, so he's not in the best of health. They're both in their late 80s. Plus, my dad, everybody in the family on my dad's side have said that he's, quote, special, meaning he's been kind of antisocial. And so I ended up talking to his wife. She was shocked that I existed, but it's kind of hard to argue with a DNA test that he's my dad. And when she talked to him, he denied that I ever existed and swore that he said he never wanted to see me and all of this sort of stuff. So it's like, okay, fine, no problem. But he has a daughter, and so she's my half sister. And she had so many problems with our dad that she didn't want anything to do with the family. So she was kind of estranged from the family. But there was one family member that had her contact information, and it was actually her daughter, this woman's daughter, that was my first DNA match that sort of led to finding that side of the family. And so she had contact information for my half-sister. So she contacted my half-sister and said, "Are you interested in talking with your possible brother?" So she left it up to her. Okay. Didn't give me any contact information. So my half-sister called me, and we've been in contact every month since then. And so I have a half-sister on my dad's side, and we're getting to know each other, and it's great fun. Now on my mom's side, I actually went to meet my mom and one of my half-sisters in Michigan in May. And so I got to meet my mom and got a long overdue hug and kiss from her. It turns out what we suspected was true. We suspected that when I was born, because the adoption was prearranged, that my mom actually never saw me. And that's true. As soon as she gave birth, they whisked me away, and I never saw my mom at all. And actually, a little side note, there was some separation anxiety that I struggled through as a kid because of that, because I never ever connected with my mom, right? So, but anyway, that was interesting to find out that she affirmed, yes, indeed, you were whisked away from me and I never got to see you at all, ever. So that's why I say a long overdue hug and kiss from my mom. So it was great to actually see her and get to give her a big hug and get a kiss from her and everything. So it's like, only took 60 some years. But then it was great to meet my half sister, and she's a character and is a lot of fun. And in fact, she came out to spend a week with us in August. And so we took her all around to our favorite sites in Oregon, because my birth mom used to live here. So we actually found the house that I was in when I was in the oven, when she was pregnant with me. We actually found the house. And then we went to another location in Oregon on the coast to try to find my grandmother, which was my birth mom's mom, because she was buried in Coos Bay, Oregon. So unfortunately, we didn't find the grave, because there's 8,000 gravestones in this cemetery. But one of my mother's sisters, who lives near here, she actually went back to Coos Bay with her grandson, and they went because we had gone during the weekend, so the cemetery office was closed. So she went to the cemetery office during the week, and long story short, they found my grandmother's grave. So,
okay.
So now we know where it is. So, yeah, it's the one sad note is I had two half sisters on my mom's side. The youngest one, who was just in her mid-50s, was struggling with chronic pancreatitis.
Ooh.
And she passed away this last summer. So
Sad to hear.
yeah, so I did.
But you did get the chance to meet her, though, did you?
I never actually met her in person, but I
Okay.
did get to talk to her a couple times on the telephone.
So it sounds like all in all, it was a good experience. Like you're glad it's there's more positives than negatives.
Oh, it's fascinating. Yes, and we, there are several of them are on Facebook, and we communicate, every few days, and it's just really interesting to now know my birth family on each side. And the other thing that's interesting is there are certain characteristics about me and my kids that have looked at, and we've never been quite sure where that came from. Why are they interested in that, or why do they have that particular attribute, including myself? Because it didn't really fit with my adopted family and what they were like. And now we realize it was DNA, because we found those characteristics on either my dad's side or my mom's side. So it's been fascinating to see, because there's always this debate. Is it environment or is it pre-wired in the DNA? Well, I can now tell you that some of it is pre-wired. And even though I was not raised in my birth family, I and my grandkids have attributes that came from those families, even though we never met them. So the whole thing's just been fascinating.
Yeah.
A fascinating study on DNA and families, and
Just a plus all the way around.
it's
Yeah.
been great.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. I kind of apologize for putting you on the spot there. Wasn't sure, but I know last year you were quite excited, and I'm glad things have, had some pluses to you. It's great to hear.
Yeah, and I got family I never knew I had in cities around the country too.
Yeah, Bruce, you put him right on the spot there. Eh? Come on. Well, Joe, first we got to apologize to Jason Clockey right now, because we were going to put his episode on and the first Monday in January, but I'm going to put this on instead. So, Jason, you need to look for your episode, unfortunately, because February is Dave Abeley's month, and Dave is a very interesting guy. So, Jason, you're going to be on the third Monday in March. And the other thing I want to do, I'm not going to go into any details, but I had some discussions with Joe that I initiated, and I was very animated in my discussions, and I just wanted to say on the air, Joe, that you're nothing but a gentleman, and I consider myself lucky to know you.
Well, I appreciate that, Lionel, and I feel the same way. You're great. You're a great guy, and I'm glad to be associated with you. And like I said, if we can get your mug in front of the camera on Trainmasters TV coming up, I would love to do that again.
I'd love to do it. I think guaranteed I'll go there. Guaranteed. You tell me when to be there, and I'll be there.
Okay, sounds great, Lionel.
Okay. So, Joe,
can I bring a couple housekeeping notes first?
yeah, absolutely. I was just about to
way back at the beginning, we were talking about super fans and numbers and stuff like that. I mentioned Eddie Cheevers, and we were talking goalies. Well, of course, Eddie Cheevers was a race car driver. It was Jerry Cheevers who played goal for Boston, and he wore number 30. But however, number 31 was worn by a couple of goalies you may have heard of, Grant Fuhr and Billy Smith.
Grant Fuhr of the Edmonton Oilers.
Edmonton Oilers and Billy Smith of the New York Islanders.
Both, between the two of them, won multiple Stanley Cups.
Yes, sir.
And I really believe, Bruce, I know you have a heavy influence on this, but I really believe, I'm not prepared to make little Mike a super fan now. I think I'm going to filibuster, but I think regardless of what happens to super fans in the future, I think we should keep 31 open for that day that we finally decide, okay, we'll let him in.
Yeah.
So whatever super fan is up next, that'll be 32. And we'll leave that 31 spot open. I'm not 100% sure he'll ever be a super fan, but that 31 spot will be reserved.
But of course, we always put Christina in as 31.
Yeah, that was Jacobs that brought that up. I love Christina. She's wonderful, but I think we need to kind of keep it to people that were, like regulars on the show. We can't just be giving, these are very prestigious awards. We just can't hand them out like Canadian Tire money.
AML points cards, that what we need.
Yeah, AML points cards. And was there any other housekeeping?
No, that was it. I had those notes down. I worked the Google, and because I know somebody would have said, "Hey, you idiots! Eddie Cheevers drove cars and blah blah blah." So
well, yeah,
we preempted that.
Exactly, because Joe, unbeknownst to us, thousands and thousands of people are listening to this, which caught us completely off guard. We did not expect that, so now we actually have to pay attention to what we say. Bruce, could you give out the email address?
Yes, I will give out our email address in case you want to tell us that we caught our mistake and you're glad we did. Or maybe you're miffed so you didn't get to write us about it. But our email address is modeler'slife, modelers with one L, modeler'slife@gmail.com.
And for those of you that don't know, Canadian Tire is the equivalent of Menards in the United States. Do you have Menards in Oregon, Joe?
Yes, we do.
All right. Is Menards like countrywide through the lower 48, do you think?
Pretty much, I think.
Yeah. So anyways, Canadian Tire is like Menards. So, and they have this, you buy stuff with cash and they give you Canadian Tire money. So that's how I came up with that. We can't hand out superfan certificates like it's Canadian Tire money. And we have a website, don't we, Bruce?
We do.
modelerslife.com. If you go there, you're going to find little descriptions and pictures about some of the most recent episodes and stories about a crew and all the kinds of stuff. And you can sign up for Patreon if you like this. You can sign up at Patreon, and for $5 a month, you get another 4 podcasts, which we call the Antics Channel. It was dubbed the Antics Channel by our very favorite number 27 superfan, Kaylee Zhang, who is also the creator of the Zanger. So there you go.
Yes.
And then finally, I bet you don't remember what to say, Joe.
Happy rails to you.
Yeah, but not yet.
Okay.
You got to hang on just a minute because I got to find there's paperwork that has to be done.
There's so much paperwork for electronic stuff.
Yeah, Joe. What is the deal with that? How come electronic stuff creates paperwork? What is the deal with that?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Joe, as we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life, and the sun slowly sets over the back 40, I guess there's nothing else left to do except for you to say,
happy rails to you.
And now it's time for the New Jersey Transit Elevator Escalator Report. Take it away, Dave.
Good morning, everybody. Today, number 1 here on the list is Newark Penn Station number 14. That one needs a step chain adjustment. They got to adjust the lower carriage assembly. Newark Penn Station number 8 is back in service. Secaucus 16 was out overnight for a skirt panel reset, but he's back in service too. Somerville eastbound is still out for its DCA test. We had a sump pump problem, so they should be back on that later this week. And Absecon, the lone elevator there, was out overnight. Somebody held the doors open too long, and it's back in service as of this morning.
It's another Lincoln Homer.